It's happening again. Bears lose their week 8 game against the Baltimore Ravens 30-16. What does this mean going forward for the team? Welcome to Bears Digest, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Dylan Guinzy. Thank you for joining me once again. If you have not subscribed already, please do so. 91% of watchers over the last month are not subscribed. So please be sure to hit that bell so you can get updates, news, rumors, breaking information, game reactions like we're doing here today. Make sure you get all that information, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. So today we had a brutal game for the Bears, and there's really nothing that you can point to that was positive about this game. When Lamar was ruled out yesterday, after all of the weird things that were going on with the Ravens, the illegal stuff with the injury report and them lying that he was a full participant and he wasn't, things like that. Um, the betting line only moved down from 6.5 to 3 in Baltimore's favor. When I saw that and it didn't move from that point, I think it ended up at -2.5 for the Ravens. Vegas knew that this was a game that the Ravens were going to win. I think the Ravens knew that this was a game that they were going to win. And honestly, the way the Bears played, I think they knew this was a game that they were going to lose as well. Everything, all facets, special teams, offense, defense, it was all brutal. We knew the defense was very injured and it was going to be tough to come back from on that point. But overall, just a putrid performance. And Caleb got outplayed by Lamar's backup in this game, and that is inexcusable. We're going to discuss that here going forward, but we have a couple of main points and things, reasons for optimism as well, and things that we can't truly panic on just 7 games into the season as well. So we're going to discuss all of that, of course. So we'll get right into the thick of it there. So 30-16 was the final score for today. Started off with the first 2 drives for the Bears. It looked good. The scripted plays were fine. They were working. And you come out with 2 field goals in those first 2 possessions. That is where you have to come out and you have to absolutely pound it in their face. And you cannot let them ever get close to you after that point. You need to be at 14-0 after that. Every team fights back, especially at home and especially in the position that the Ravens were in. But you have to convert those red zone drives into touchdowns. And Ben did not trust Caleb to throw in the red zone today. He did not want him to throw. And it's quickly looking like the trust is not there. And Caleb is just kind of in his own head at this point. And so after you started up, 6-0 in the first quarter, the Ravens couldn't do anything on offense. We kept the ball away from them, of course. That's what they also tried to do on the other side of the ball themselves. And they did that right after the first quarter. They got up 7-6. And from that point forward, we never touched the ball. And when we did, it didn't look good. And not scoring any points in the second and third quarter, if you're Chicago, is not a recipe to win this game. Just a laundry list of items that you can point to. The penalties, again, still an issue. We lead the league in penalties, especially along the offensive line, false starts, everything that you can think of. It was horrible, and it's continuing, right? The false starts and the drive-killing penalties, all that stuff is still going on. And we're, in week 8 going into week 9 now after today, and they're still happening, right? So this is kind of a players thing at this point. Ben said it in the press conference after, like, he's been drilling this into them, and the rest of the coaching staff has, and they're just not picking it up, and they're not getting it. The problem with the 4-game win streak, if there is any, I guess, it's great that they won 4 games in a row, but a lot of their issues were being masked by the turnovers that the defense was getting, and they ended up sneaking by in a couple of games to get that win streak going against lesser opponents. When you get a team that is desperate to save their season in Baltimore, they're without their quarterback that we didn't know of until yesterday, and they're coming off a bye week. They are fully healthy now as well, and they have that much talent on their team, and they're at home. That is a game that the Bears were going to lose pretty much 9 times out of 10, and that happened here today. The real issue is just like how they're playing and how they're going about it. If they would have lost 24-21 and it was a close game all the way through, there wasn't a ton of mistakes and Caleb played pretty well, then whatever, right? The Ravens were going to win that game. I don't care who was playing out there. They were going to win that game. We knew it going into it. If you didn't, you got to learn the NFL a little bit more, because this is the types of games that are kind of written in the script, I guess you can call it. So they weren't winning that game. But it's just the way that it looks, right? None of the issues that we've been talking about, especially with the offense and everything, those things aren't getting fixed. And that led to the 30-16 loss here today. So we'll just discuss a little bit of the stats and everything like that. Caleb was putrid today. 2 games in a row now that were really bad by him. He is in his own head. He's not making the easy throws, different things like that. And Ben's not trusting him to throw it deep or over the middle of the field, in pressure situations. And that's a problem, right? That's a serious issue that we have to deal with and acknowledge. Every quarterback in this league, even the elite ones, even the best ones, they're going to have bad games. But what the elite ones do is they come back the next week and they perform. Caleb is not doing that. That's a couple of weeks now that it's stacked onto each other, maybe even 4 weeks stacked onto each other. And when you win, it's fine. You can kind of get over it. You want to work on stuff as you're winning and things like that. Now, when it's a reason for a loss, that's when the pressure mounts. And he just kind of looks like a shell of himself right now. It's really disappointing. You can't make grand proclamations or anything about, what that means in the future or going forward in your, situation next year and things like that. But overall, it just looks like Ben doesn't trust him right now, and he doesn't trust himself. Those two things, it's an issue. Ben's play calls weren't the greatest either. He even admitted it after the game. So all that kind of ties into one another. I kind of mentioned it during the game. I put some notes down on it. Like, when they get ahead and they get a big lead, and then they know that the defense has some opportunities to get some turnovers, they just play with a lot more confidence and a lot more risk on offense because they are comfortable in that way. It just looked like today Ben was trying to be so particular in his play calls to just not give the ball back to the Ravens, and that did exactly that. It just gave it back to the Ravens. Look, we want Caleb to make mistakes where we're forcing the ball or we're pushing the ball down the field. We don't want him to make dumb reads and dumb decisions where he just throws it right to a defender. What we want is, let's push it down the field. If he throws a 40-yard bomb and, defender makes a great play, whatever, right? But you're at least making the defense honor that pass, right? And they're honoring that, and they're not just completely clamping down on all of the short stuff, which is what's happening, and Ben's calling it. He doesn't trust Caleb to go over the top, and then that's why these interceptions are happening and why they look so easy for the defense. That's just why it's happening. They're pinning their ears back. They know what's coming, and they're biting on these throws and kind of undercutting them, which is what Nate Wiggins did there for Baltimore to get that pick. So 285 yards for Caleb, 1 pick, 2 weeks in a row without a touchdown. Pretty embarrassing there. They were at the one at the end of the game too. You could get a garbage touchdown to pad your stats a little bit. Couldn't even do that. Missed a wide open DJ Moore in the back of the end zone. So overall, very, 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 very poor past 2 weeks for Caleb. And, we said it in the keys of the game the other day that the Bears needed to run the ball well again. They needed a turnover or two, and Caleb needed to play more consistent. None of those things happened. That's why they lost, right? I said it on, Friday when we released that video that they were pretty obvious things in terms of, winning the game. They weren't some crazy ideas, but that's what they needed to do to win the game. None of them happened, and that's why they lost. So overall, very, very bad game there. Team stats don't look much better. Tyler Huntley just outplayed us in all facets. Derrick Henry was falling forward for 6 yards every single time. A lot of backbreaking runs that they had. They had 177 rushing yards to our 96. It's kind of just how it goes there. We did have more total yards, but that kind of came into play at the end of the game there where we were pushing it down and they were kind of playing soft defense in that case there. Special teams was horrible again today. Penalties, starting drives way back deep into your own territory, and then the returns. I mean, they had just a plethora of returns that were just way too deep, and we can't cover. So that's got to be fixed up as well. Just all 3 phases was a poor game. Again, that was probably a game that you weren't going to win no matter what, but you just got to see better results on the field, right? You're going to lose games in the NFL. 5-game winning streak does not happen often, and you're due to lose at some point, but let's at least play hard and, get better at things that we need to get better at, and that's not happening right now. So final thing, We'll just touch on Caleb here once again. It's really disappointing. He's kind of playing the same as he did last year at this point, just with less sacks. But he's making stupid decisions in other areas and missing some easy stuff. So there were a number of times where Ben could have had better play calls for sure. We need to push it down the field and at least attempt the deep ball. You're not going to get better at it without attempting it in games. So that's one thing that I thought Ben could have done better. But also Caleb, just on the easy stuff. I mean, he's throwing 120-mile-an-hour missiles when it's literally just a check down sometimes and players are dropping it and things like that. So you can't really blame that on the receivers. That's really on him. You got to have more touch and more feel with your throws. He's got to get better, and he's got to get better quick if the Bears want to have an opportunity to make a push down the stretch. This is by no means the end or anything like that, but I could really see, last year's team, same situation. This is where this kind of derailed for the team. I hope that doesn't happen again. I hope Ben gets them to respond and come back next week and play a lot better. But just the way it's going, I think this is one of those years where the injuries are mounting up. There's a lot of unlucky stuff that's kind of going on with them. This was never the year that they were going to make that push. Now, could you sneak into the playoffs and back in just because of the schedule over the stretch? Sure. But this was kind of one of those games that you needed to give you that cushion to potentially get to that, 9-win mark and give yourself an opportunity to get in. But overall, if you're not ready to be in that spot yet, which the Bears probably aren't, there's no reason to kind of backdoor your way in and have some, false self-confidence going into the next year. So we'll see how this goes. They need to get to 5-3, next week playing the Bengals. The AFC North always gives the Bears a lot of problems just with the physicality and the way that they play. And we were out physicaled on every side of the ball here today, and that's kind of what led to the loss. But Caleb was not good. Everybody's got to be better. Obviously, no, he's not being benched. You have to play the entire year out, and maybe even more in Ben's scheme. And Ben's going to make the decision going forward into the future, what's going to happen. But of course, going into this game, nobody was talking about that. So you can't 2 hours later say that, he's not the answer. But he is not playing good at all. You can't deny that one bit. So overall, this was a very, very poor game and poor performance by Chicago. And got to rebound, got to get back in practice. We're going to watch the injury report. Doesn't look good. We're going to have, a bunch of future real estate agents covering Jamar Chase and T. Higgins next week. So you're going to have to score 35-plus points. Don't have the confidence in that, but we're going to see how that works out. So, of course, guys, thank you for joining once again. Although it's not always the greatest terms, but we didn't lose in 6 weeks, and that was very fun. Now that is over, we got to have to face reality, take a step back, and then get back to it and hopefully get back on the winning track next week. So, thank you guys for joining once again in Bears Digest. Subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, bear down.